What makes this video special is we get to listen to the SEC versus Ripple Judge, Honorable Annalisa Torres, in her own words, speaking about judges, the law, and even a part of her own personal history. This video was uploaded on April 11th of this year, and it was to commemorate the Women's History Month. The New York chapter of the National Association of Women Judges hosted this program honoring and celebrating the life of Constance Baker Motley, the civil rights queen, as she is called, and why all women owe her a debt of gratitude.
So Judge Torres, I'd like you to weigh in on that question, but I'm going to reformulate it a little bit. Do you think that the practice of a specific area of law should subject a candidate for judicial office to a higher level of scrutiny?
The short answer is no, but I think that judges should be very robustly vetted. They've got to have a thick skin, and they should understand that their background is going to be scoured.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, that I know maybe a judge might decide to go in the other direction, just to prove his or her impartiality. But I think in the end that most judges, at least hopefully most judges, will set that aside and be fair and down the middle. I think that's what we've all tried to do, and everyone here has tried to do. Many judges in this audience.
So this is a perfect transition to you, Judge Torres. Like Judge Motley, you've presided over cases involving issues touching on race, ethnicity, and gender. We have a lot of judges here. Would you offer them some advice on how you adapt and adjust to fight the good fight of advancing equality and justice for all?
Well, I think that Judge Saparic has summed it up. You've got to come to the job with an open mind and mindful that you carry biases. And the question is identifying those biases so that you can put them aside.
You're now about to learn about her impressive bio, a book and a documentary that she's working on in regards to her grandfather, who was also a judge.
So this is a perfect transition to you, Judge Torres. Judge Torres's family has been long and prominent in public service and in politics. Your father, Frank Torres, served for many years on the New York State Supreme Court in the Bronx, I believe, and was a Democratic member of the New York State Assembly. And your grandfather, which is unbelievable, Felipe Torres, served as a family court judge and was also an assemblyman. So Judge Torres is writing a book and producing a documentary titled Felipe N. Torres, an Afro-Puerto Rican Journey Through the 20th Century. This book and the documentary are about her grandfather, who was born on a farm in Puerto Rico, migrated to New York, and emerged as a leader in the Spanish-speaking community as a lawyer, legislator, and judge. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your own career. Were there any individuals or group of supporters that sought you out and helped you to orchestrate your ascent to the federal bench?
In 2009, I was an acting Supreme Court justice. I had been elected to the civil court, and I wanted to get elected to the Supreme Court. And there is a ritual that you follow in Manhattan. You go to a lot of political dinners and cocktails, and you are a supplicant to the party leaders asking for their support. And so I was at an event in 2009, and this very beautiful blonde-haired woman comes up to me and she says, "I'm going to make you a federal judge." It was Kirsten Gillibrand. And I absolutely did not believe her. I thought she was exaggerating. But then she went up to my husband, who was in another part of the room, and said the same thing. She gave me her card. I never called her because I just didn't believe it. So that year, the powers that be told me that I wasn't qualified to be elevated to the Supreme Court and that I'd have to wait my turn. So in 2010, again, I was making my rounds. There was actually a function here at the Association of the Bar, and I was talking to a group of lawyers when Kirsten Gillibrand joined the group and announced, "I'm going to make her a federal judge." Again, I did not believe her and I did not follow up. I finally did get the Supreme Court seat, and then you have to do a victory lap. So the following year, I was at an event, and once again, Kirsten Gillibrand came up to me and said, "What, why is it that you're not calling me back?" I was with a very dear old friend when the senator came up, and she just went like that. You've gotta look into this. But then within a couple of days, I got a call from Senator Schumer's office. And so it was at that point that I said, well, maybe this is real, because I just didn't think that Schumer would waste his time. So they talked between the two of them, and it was decided that Gillibrand would nominate me. But I had never practiced in the federal court. I actually had never been inside the federal court. And Senator Gillibrand nominated me.
I love this part of my channel when I do my research and I find there's so much to this world I don't know.
So let's fast forward a little bit to 1964, in the months just before and after the passage of the Civil Rights Act. Motley had a nationally recognized name as well as a sterling reputation. Few people, and still fewer Black Americans, could claim to be as widely known as Constance Baker Motley. She was perfectly positioned for her political fortunes to rise. So Judge Torres, can you talk a little bit about the circumstances that caused the Manhattan power brokers to seek Motley out to run for elective office?
I want to start with a question. What lessons do we take away from the political process that led to Constance Baker Motley's election to the New York State Senate, the Manhattan Borough Presidency, and her appointment to the Federal District Court? One, we learned how influential members of the Black community, in a systematic and coordinated effort, mobilized both to persuade her to run and to assist her in the on-the-ground campaigning. Two, we learned that African-American leaders were not a unified bloc during the Civil Rights era. And we learn that backroom political deals in New York City were sometimes honored and sometimes not. In 1963, Constance Baker Motley ran into her old college friend, James L. Watson. Watson was a New York State senator at that time, representing the Upper West Side, Harlem, and part of Washington Heights. Watson told Motley that he was going to run for the civil court and that he wanted her to run for his soon-to-be open seat on the state Senate. Motley wasn't interested at all. Nevertheless, Watson went to J. Raymond Jones, who was known as the Fox, and asked him to make it happen. In addition, there were several important people that Motley respected who pressured her to run. Dorothy Height, the president of the National Council of Negro Women, Dr. Kenneth Clark, a psychologist whose study was cited in the Brown versus Board of Education case, and Robert C. Weaver, the first Black presidential cabinet member as head of HUD. So I'm going to go back to J. Raymond Jones. He was a powerful political figure in Harlem, and he was often loyal to the Tammany Hall machine. But sometimes he sided with the reform wing of the Democratic Party when it was to his advantage. He was known nationally as a kingmaker. Presidential candidates like Kennedy asked for his support. Notably, at the 1960 Democratic National Convention, Jones was the only member of the New York delegation to vote for Lyndon Johnson for president. And LBJ never forgot that. When Jones ran for city council in 1963, he made a deal with some reformers in the Democratic Party. He said if they would back him for the council, Jones would back the reformers candidate for the Senate seat when the seat opened up in the future. So when Watson declared that he would be resigning from the Senate, the reformers proposed their candidate. It was Noel Ellison, but Ellison was a convicted criminal. He ran numbers out of his dry cleaning store in Harlem. So Jones did not find him to be a suitable candidate, and he backed Motley. Interestingly, Adam Clayton Powell backed a third candidate, a Harlem lawyer. This special election was held in February '64. Motley won, and then she won again in the general election in '65. So in '64, she was in the state Senate, and for the first time, the state Senate had a Democratic majority, and there was a fight over who was going to be Democratic majority leader. Bobby Kennedy, senator at that time, wanted a conservative Democrat, a Democrat who had voted against civil rights legislation. And to get Motley to support the Kennedy candidate, he offered her a deal. Support my candidate for majority leader, and I will submit your name to the president for appointment to the federal district court. Motley would have none of that. She backed the liberal candidate. Come February 1965, there's a vacancy for the Manhattan borough presidency. Jones again supports Motley, and Adam Powell supports another candidate. Motley won. So in 1966, apparently Kennedy at some point had submitted the name. She gets a call from LBJ, and he says, come to my office. So she goes to the White House, and they're sitting there, and he says, you're going to be a federal judge. And he picks up the phone and calls Bobby Kennedy. He says, Bobby, I want you to talk to Judge Motley. So T. Raymond Jones took credit for the appointment. So what is the final takeaway from this? Constance Baker Motley was a political novice. She was not a backroom politician, but she benefited from the machinations of the wheeler dealers, and we're the better for it.
So as a follow-up to that, did Motley have to reinvent herself in order for her to gain the confidence of the voters?
So she was a reserved attorney. She was a towering figure, a crusader for equality, and used to being in the courtroom. When she ran for Senate, she had to be a retail politician. And so she was, with the assistance of a number of people, Dorothy Height, Robert Weaver, they walked around with her when she was standing by the subways as pedestrians were walking by and people were coming out, handing out her literature and asking for people's votes. It's a humbling experience to ask for someone to vote for you. So I think with relative ease, she was able to make that transition.